the organ loft he swore was being tuned. The calendar square arrived at 6:09 p.m., tidy as a hymn. Heritage Fund Gala, St. Anselm Cathedral late. 2 minutes later, Marco texted, "Don't wait up." Music director asked me to peek at the wind chests after speeches. Proud of me. Read he spends the heart when the rest of the sentence wants to borrow a badge. I turned the soup down to the kind of simmer that calls itself maturity and looked toward the hill. At dusk the cathedral sits like an apology someone learned to mean. Stone ribs and stained glass, the nave flooded with light that pretends to forgive. The square on my phone pulsed once and then behaved. I rinsed an already clean spoon because sometimes unnecessary is the only honest verb available. At 6:28 my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize and a message that recognized me anyway. If the gala, in the transept, why did he just badge the organ door and climb the loft stair? West Cloister. Reader hates witnesses, cover it and lean. I can hold sweep 2 minutes. Signed with a single letter, E, as if the alphabet had leaned on a carved choir stall and promised not to creak. E runs nights in the cathedral the way a good stage manager runs a miracle, quietly, on time, never claiming credit. He and Marco trade competence in a dialect of locks and fixtures. He and I have shared 2 cigarettes in the shadow of a flying buttress, and once a laugh sharp enough to make a security dome tilt, as if stone wanted to listen. We have not touched. I remember not touching more clearly than most men remember vows. "Why tell me?" I wrote. "Because your calendar is polite and my badge logs aren't," he sent. Because he looked up before he swiped. People only look up there when they want oxygen. Because being tuned is keep out, the way champagne is hydration. The West Cloister smelled like wet limestone and old incense. I covered the reader's red eye with my palm and leaned. The iron caught itself and chose to be generous. The stair coiled up behind the triforium like a rumor. The air changed with height, thinning into something studious. Choir practice bled through masonry in careful lines. The loft offered itself a step at a time until the city fell away, and the organ's great wooden face studied the nave with a patience I have never earned. He was where E said he'd be. By the wind chest levers, jacket off, shirt open 1 button past credible, tie rolled into his pocket like a plausible denial. Opposite him leaned Julian Crane, developer, board vice chair, a roomer with a pew and a penthouse, and a smile kept in immaculate reserve. 2 of Julian's fingers rested on the polished rail with half a claim. The other hand hovered near Marco's wrist without landing, because proximity photographs better than contact when your brand buys restoration and invoices discretion. "Tuned looks social," I said. Marco turned. For a beat the truth used his face like glass before it reflects. Then the public version arrived, posture, breath, every trick he has learned for rooms full of people who clap for their own feelings. "Rhett," he said. I how did. "He likes nouns," I said. "I like doors." Julian smiled in the register of benefactors. "We were discussing wind leaks," he said. "Patrons delight in hearing the breath of the instrument." "I prefer breath that doesn't need an audience," I said, and the pipe above us gave a small, honest whistle like agreement. Marco took 1 step toward me and let the planks keep the second. "We were listening to the bellows," he said. He wanted to hear the air without speeches. "Sound is persuasive," Julian said, opening both hands like tasteful parentheses. 2 minutes. The sweep is punctual, my driver is superstitious. He drifted along the gallery and paused to look down into the nave where the gala moved like well-dressed weather. As he passed, 2 fingers tapped Marco's shoulder, punctuation, not possession. Marco watched me the way men watch weather when they hope thunder remembers to choose somewhere else. "I was going to text you," he said, lower now, using the register he keeps for mornings and the soft under my jaw. After, I wanted to know I could leave this room without letting it rename me. You wanted to be caught, I said, not punished, caught. He let one breath out, and the carved mouth of a wooden angel lessened its scowl by the width of a memory. Yes. There is a height at which grammar resigns. I stepped into his space and put my mouth on his because timber deserves honesty and air deserves witnesses. He kissed back with the relief of a man who has been paying interest on restraint, compounded nightly by applause and duty. He tasted like gala bourbon and dust that had attended every note for 100 years. My thumb found the hinge of his jaw and pressed. He made the small, involuntary sound I keep receipts for. His palm slid under my shirt and settled flat between my shoulder blades. Weight, temperature, promise that refuses notarization. We didn't undress. The loft charges extra and cameras learn quickly. He broke the kiss first because he knows the exact second heat applies for narrative. He put his forehead to mine. The bellows gave a polite shudder as if the instrument were practicing empathy. I didn't kiss him, he said. I wanted to want to, I texted E. You did, I said. He prefers oxygen to salvage. Below us, the gala found a speech and pretended it mattered. Julian tilted his head the way men do when they expect the room to write them down. He didn't approach. He treated the organ like a mirror that always obliges. Come home, Marco said. After I thank the person who hears doors, I said. E waited where the loft gives itself back to the stair, lanyard looped over 2 fingers, the patience of someone who can make stone forgive a hinge. He didn't smile. He also didn't make mercy expensive. Sweep hits the loft in 90, he said. If you don't want to explain your lives to a flashlight that knows your shoes, take the triforium east to the rude stair, down past the sacristy, and out through the choir gate. The yard cam believes every cassock is a cassock. You sent the message, I said. I opened a door, he said. You two remembered how to walk. The triforium marches along the clerestory like a quiet argument. Pigeons made their respectful comments on the far side of glass. The rude stair puts stone on a schedule nobody negotiates with. We passed the sacristy where men pretend ownership of silence, and slipped through the choir gate into a yard where Rain had been practicing honesty. We chose sidewalks over lobbies because lobbies write captions. At home, the soup forgave me for confusing patience with character. We ate standing, like mammals who know where the bowls live. He told me Julian had been sculpting a compliment into a proposition for weeks, and he had helped because selection feels like love when usefulness empties your pockets. I told him he had texted because some people choose air over alibi. He didn't ask whether E and I had ever been a worse idea. I didn't say how a red exit light turns E's mouth into punctuation that finally understands itself. We didn't fight. There wasn't theater left to sell. Later, in bed, we left a sliver of cool like a reservation and then let it surrender because the night had already billed us for restraint. He kissed me with the steadiness I trust more than policy. I put my mouth where his jaw goes humble and told it a morning. It was heat without spectacle. The building minded its radiators. Up on the hill, the cathedral pretended to forget names, and we encouraged it. Morning behaved. Coffee made its case. The calendar square for tonight stayed blank, which in this town is the kink we can afford. Marco tied a tie over a throat I intend to retire with patience and kissed me like the door already knew our names. He left to explain continuity to a breakfast that confuses stone with goodness. At 9:14, a text arrived from a number saved as one letter. No loft cam saw anything but wood. I looped a blower test for 20. Consider it training. I sent, you're very proud of your training. He replied, "I'm proud of your exit. No punctuation correct." By noon, a society blog posted Julian in a champagne halo, captioned with stewardship and tradition. I scrolled past. It wasn't our room. At 1:23, Marco sent a photo of our kitchen plant basking in a modest square of sun. "Room exists," he wrote. The week pretended to be a liturgical calendar you could trust. Julian sent a revised pledge with fewer adjectives and more commas. Marco read to the part where commas turned into a harness and set it face down. He pressed his forehead to my temple for 7 slow counts. The air remembered its job. 2 nights later, the cathedral hosted Night on the Organ, honest wristbands, real families, children learning you can fly without leaving the floor. We went together, because sometimes the correct grammar is plural. E nodded once from a shadow like an usher who knows his work matters. Julian shook Marco's hand while a photographer taught gilding to glow. A reporter asked about legacy. Marco pointed to the organ builder kneeling to show a boy how to tie a drawstring without scolding and said, "Legacy is what keeps rooms gentle." And the reporter wrote it down like she'd earned a truth. On the way home, we cut along the river where reflections try on the city and keep what fits. Marco slid 2 fingers into my back pocket in the way that says not mine but here, and the night did the decent thing and looked away. We burned the toast and ate it anyway. At the bedroom door, he kissed me the way good sentences land, without ornament, unavoidable. I answered as if verbs were the last honest currency. It did not stay tidy. It never does here. An anonymous account posted a grainy still from the loft stair, 2 silhouettes near a carved rail, one hand too near to be polite. The caption invented entanglement, the comments rented outrage and billed by the breath. I set my phone face down beside the plant and watched the plant win. Marco texted a different image. The organ shop at noon, showing a teen volunteer how to lap a valve while a pressure gauge confessed contentment. "Our version works for a living," he wrote. Sunday arrived with rain that had read the manual. He texted, "Loft is quiet. Want a stool where nobody sells you a seat?" We went. He poured us paper cups of coffee that tasted like competence and showed us which slider lies first, why you never trust a door that apologizes, and the almost silent change in hiss that means a palate will miss its cue without kindness. He did not flirt with anything, not even the truth. He stood with his hands in his jacket pockets and told us a joke about rich men who think resonance is a metaphor. I liked him better for refusing to be necessary when he didn't need to be. Midweek, the foundation staged a press moment to announce scholarships for organ apprentices. Marco spoke first, about bolts and volunteers and the joy of maintenance, the only speech that ages correctly. Julian promised to help the city meet its hours on time, a sentence that managed to spend nothing and still collect applause. After, he shook Marco's hand and then looked at me with the careful respect of a man evaluating whether he cannot purchase. "You're both very good at exits," he said. "Practice," I said. He laughed because it was the only honest thing left on his card. A columnist with an adjective habit suggested Marco's access came courtesy of private tour. The piece included a photo of wood that could have been any wood and a paragraph that could have been any rumor. The comments did their choreography. I carried the plant to the sink and let water talk to its roots like a promise we could keep. That night, we turned our phones face down and cooked like people who still believe heat tells the truth. On a windy Thursday, he sent a single word, weather, and we met him by the north porch where downspouts negotiate with stone. He showed us which drain floods first, where to stand when lightning auditions near bell metal, and how to hear the tiny hesitation that means the strike train will miss its cue without kindness. He didn't ask about the photo. We didn't say his name out loud. 3 people wide under a hood of rain, We let the storm remove adjectives we didn't need. Life kept refusing to be purchased. Julian kept sending commas that wanted homes. Marco kept returning them with better ones. The plant kept inventing a shade of green that turns vanity domestic. We kept our calendar squares blank on purpose, because blanks are the only promises rooms respect. Sometimes, near midnight, we walk the hill and look up. From the street you can't see the rail where two fingers hovered like a claim that never learned to become a fact. You can't see the small, decent posture of a man who teaches heavy air to be gentle. You can only see a disciplined glow pretending not to belong to anyone. That's as it should be. We circle the block and go home without letting the building perform at us. He takes my wrist like a man reteaching himself the grammar of doors. I think about the loft and the 2 minutes that were enough, about how some rooms try to own you and others teach you how to leave correctly. Sometimes I think about Julian paused by a pipe face like a man who wants to buy air and discovering it doesn't invoice. Sometimes I think about E's line, "I opened a door," and how it's the only biography I want for this version of us. Tonight's square is empty. We're leaving it that way. Let the cathedral keep its speeches and the city its applause. We have the choir gate, a plant we refuse to let die, and the quiet grammar of a decision that knows where it belongs. Not in the rumor, not in the photo, but in the mouth that learned to say come home and mean it. If we get caught again, let it be by each other. The rest of the world can rehearse wonder. We'll be in the room that doesn't need it, counting breaths until they sound like a palate settling into kindness, and a morning we can afford, and calling that enough.